But I have seen time and time again that the universe actually is kind of fair when it comes to that. Now, everybody has different scenarios, and yeah, you may not have food this day, or you may have extreme difficulty, but everyone has all the resources they need right this second. So if you have a voice and can talk, you can go ahead and reach out to other people, start talking about your problem, start talking about a possible solution, start attracting people to what you're doing or helping you to solve this. If you need help, you ask for help. You don't pretend that you're something that you're nothing. And those little sparks, those little things of taking those actions, and it's taking action, literally gets you to the next level. And you don't have to have a pot to pee in. You can get to the next level.
Well, today I'm really excited because we have the CEO of Gusher, which helps founders create startups in a better way. He's also the founder of 24 companies in high-tech, consumer goods, health, and manufacturer. And I have to say, he has one of the best mission statements I've seen for a while. It is, we believe in the power of ideas. We believe great ideas can be born anywhere by anyone. So I want to welcome my guest today, Chris Joyce.
Thanks for having me, Kathy.
I'm excited that you're here. I'm really excited that you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
So my first question for you is, how on earth did you come up with this concept of Gusher?
It's kind of, well, a couple things, because there's layers to it. So I've always started my own companies from a young age. Now, years ago, and I was starting them out in New York City, it didn't have any money. There was no such thing as a venture capital ecosystem. And so I found that really the way that I created companies, I never needed really any money until the companies got to more than 10 million in sales, et cetera, et cetera. But at the time, we called it finagling. All right. I mean, a very basic thing. So if I needed a patent attorney, well, I didn't go ahead and need $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to file for patents. I just say, hey, will you take half a tick? And usually they would. If I needed a real estate deal, which I needed in Midtown Manhattan, well, I didn't go ahead and need, let's say, $500,000 or $250,000 to go ahead and get that deal inked. I would go ahead and include the real estate developer in the deal and actually start creating and launching companies by including all the people that really had a vested interest in seeing that company come to life as really equity holders. So that was really the start of Gusher a long time ago, 2 or 3 decades ago, was really the initial birth or laying the groundwork for what is of today, what we created.
I love that concept because actually years ago I had read something about Facebook, about how they couldn't pay people to do things. Like there was a painter that became like a multimillionaire or maybe even a billionaire because they gave him Facebook stock.
Yep.
Before Facebook was anything.
Absolutely.
So for him to come in and like paint the office.
Sure.
So is it basically the same type of concept then?
Yeah, but think of it this way. So instead of, let's say, that's a form of it. It's what we call performance-based equity. So people join a company in exchange for equity, so long as they're able to achieve the goals, so long as the company is able to achieve its objectives. Now, when you're a startup founder, you sit there and you go, hey, I've got this great idea, but you soon realize, okay, it takes the expertise of others to bring that to life. And bringing those other people into your company typically takes a good amount of money. And so that's the reason why many founders or potential founders, I should say, that idea ends up staying in their head because they don't think there's a way. They don't think there's a method of actually creating that company. But what people do is they apply, they join your company in exchange for performance-based equity. So people only get something so long as the company is able to launch, so long as the company is able to achieve its goals. Same thing with Gusher. We're a performance-based equity player also.
Okay. Are there metrics attached to it as far as like in essence, your performance-based equity of things that you need to accomplish, that you need to do, or how does that work?
Sure. Well, let's think of it this way. So let's say you're dealing with a consumer goods company, and I'm going to simplify it. Okay. So with a consumer goods company, you may need a product formulator, a bench chemist, something like that, a materials engineer. You need a chief marketing officer, a chief financial officer. Let's say you need your site developed, your creative director, your social media. Well, you're going to need approximately 8 to 10 people to really bring that company together and get it fundamentally launched. So really, it's a function of putting those teams together a certain way, and then you're able to get your company off the ground. It literally takes nothing but effort and really being on the Gusher platform to do so.
Okay, so let's talk about the Gusher platform. Tell
Sure.
me, do you bring people together or how does that work?
Sure. It's really kind of twofold. So let me give you an example. I don't want to make it seem like it's transactional, like you put something on Gusher and then boom, it just magically happens. It doesn't happen
Well, we know in business that doesn't happen anyway.
ever in almost anything. If anybody ever tells you it does, it doesn't. So let me give you a quick example. We have a dog food company on our site. A dog food company, extremely capital intensive industry, what we call a red ocean industry. There's tons of competitors. You can't throw a dead cat, excuse my French there, without hitting a dog food company. Okay. Well, this founder had a really special idea for what he was looking to do. And so the team that he created, they initially were made up of these people that had managed $50 million budgets, $100 million budgets, $200 million budgets, really big players, people that the companies and products that you probably have in your cupboard at your home right now.
Mhm.
But what happened is 6 weeks later, that company imploded. So finally, the founder listened to me, because founders don't listen in the beginning. Okay, they're like cats. They're kind of hard to wrangle and hard to
Right,
convince.
it's like herding cats, yes.
But his second team all had something in common, Kathy. This is not a trick question, okay? It's a dog food company. A year later, this team and this company is now worth more than 10 million, growing 30% month over month. It's kicking butt. Didn't take a penny of investment to get that company off the ground in raw dollars. It took people. So his second team all had something in common. It's a dog food company. They all had what, Kathy?
Experience in dog food? I
Well,
don't
well,
know.
close, but they all owned what?
Oh, well, they owned a part of the company.
They owned dogs, Kathy. They
Oh,
owned
they owned
dogs because
dogs.
it's a dog. Now, hear me out. So, if it's a transaction, no type of relationship, transactional, what ends up happening are, a person may come in, they may be a chief marketing officer, put your stuff together, but they may not really get the fundamental market unless they really own a dog. So he has a team of people that eat dogs, they breathe dogs, they live dogs, they poop dogs. They don't have children, they have
They
dogs.
have
They're like
dogs.
dog
Right.
zealots.
Mhm.
And so those are the types of teams that come together. And so we have on our site, we have a community of 30,000 people. But really what happens is you have inbound funnels, you have outbound recruiting. It's a it's a pretty intense process.
Wow, interesting. Very interesting. Now you have my wheels are turning because
Sure.
I have dogs. I actually have three dogs. They're all
Yep.
rescues. So it's I can certainly relate to that. But yes, kind of stumbled on that question a bit, but that's all right. So with all of it, because you own, right? You're a founder of 24 companies. I mean,
Sure.
how is this
So
all
that's over
part of
a long time.
Gusher, or is it like all along you have been an entrepreneur and you are constantly creating? Because you seem like someone to me that you are constantly creating, trying to find a better way to do something.
Sure. And I think you put it in a nutshell. I've always had my own companies. I always formed my own companies, but any iteration of company that I did was always done differently. So I wasn't interested in the status quo. So I wouldn't start, let's say, a consumer CPG company and do it the exact same way or even close to the same way or product that somebody else has done. So whatever industry I did, even the next deal, the next deal, the next deal would always be something new. It's just, I consider it more my way of being able to paint and be an artist, but I don't paint and I'm not an artist. So I like doing new things, new companies all the time.
Well, I have to say, then you definitely are a professional rule breaker because that is my number one thing
Yep.
that I say, people are rule breakers is they're not happy with the status quo.
Drives me crazy.
Yes, yes. So yeah, it drives me crazy too.
Eh,
Because
eh,
there's always a better way, if something is, and it has to do also with being really almost happy with failure. Because when you fail, you just kind of do a slight shift. Like, what can you do different or better?
Sure.
It's always about, what's out there that you can make a change, that you can do something better or improve, you
And
know.
they don't have to be big improvements necessarily.
No,
I
no.
mean, little shifts in stuff make all the difference. I mean, you and I were talking about something to do with Facebook earlier. Even Facebook was just an iteration off of MySpace. All they did was
Right.
standardize, they restricted behavior, and voila, you've got a new product. I mean, there's not much that separates products many times that actually ends up being quote unquote revolutionary or ends up being viral in many instances. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be the product. It can be the product message. It can be the branding of the product. It can be
Right.
who you're going after. So there's many different ways to do it.
Right, absolutely. It's just like almost like a little bit of a side pivot. And
Yep.
if that doesn't work, then you pivot again and you keep on pivoting. And the other thing too that a big thing for me as far as being a rule breaker is being able to set up non-negotiable. So when something doesn't work, you figure it out, you make it a non-negotiable, and you dig your heels in until you get to that point where yes, it does work.
And see that's a very hard thing for people that have not been on the roller coaster of awesomeness, being businesses and doing it for years to understand.
Mhm.
Because you can simplify it and say you just never give up until you get what you want. But you touched on really a very important thing. You have these things that are you have to meet, that you have to go after. I call it making a decision once. All right. You go ahead. Once I make that decision, I don't revisit that decision. So if I decide to create a company that creates companies, well, I do it. If I decide that we're going to become the greatest startup engine ever, I do it. If I decide to go ahead and create a low carbohydrate muffin because I was sick of waking up every day eating eggs and bacon, well, I do it.
Mhm.
And those are things that I don't break. Once the decision is made, you made that decision at a time when you were clear, when you were focused, when it made sense to you. You don't go ahead and revisit that decision just because things aren't working out or just because things are rough. You figure a way, or you make a way, one or the other. You just do it. Period.
I actually think that that is the secret to success.
A
Is
100%.
is that. And once you do it one time, if you can get it into your system and just repeat it on
Yep.
anything that is really important in your business or really important in your life, you will figure it out. I love what you said, making that decision once. I hadn't thought about it that way. I mean, for me, is I just make like it's going to happen. It's a non-negotiable. I'm
Right.
going to figure, it's going to happen. I mean, it can even be we recently lost one of our cats. This
I'm
is going
sorry
to
to hear
be a
that.
little bit of a tangent. No, no,
Sure.
no. It has a happy ending. So I was relentless because we found the cat was coming back and we caught her on a camera.
Okay.
31 days later, we kept on shifting. It's that same thing as far as being an entrepreneur. Something didn't work because she's very skittish. Something didn't work, so we made a shift. That didn't work. We made another shift. We kept on
Yep.
making a shift. So 31 days later, this old declawed cat is back in our house. It was all about making it a non-negotiable. I was like, we're going to find her before the coyotes do.
There you
And
go.
we're going to figure out a way. So, it can work in your life.
Oh,
In
it works. It works.
many
Listen, I'm
instances.
going to give you a simplistic story that's actually a much longer story, but paints a certain picture. Okay. So I went canoeing or rafting with my kids. It was inner tubes, actually. My kids, my wife, etc. So we're about an hour down the river. And literally, we look down and I'm like, oh my God, I don't have the bag with all our phones, keys, and everything else in it. And my wife is just, she's looking at me with that look. And so I decided to get the heck out of that raft. And so I got out of the inner tube, got out of it. And she goes, where are you going? I go, I'm just going to go get it. And she's like, how? It's a river. It's not like a creek. It is a river. Well, to make a long story short, I was looked at like a crazy man going up this river. I'm walking miles. I mean, literally, it's a fast flowing river. I'm slipping and falling every 2 steps, every 3 steps, because the bottom of a river, until you start walking it, is a very treacherous place. And I'm asking every boater, every person on that river, yeah, have you found anything? Have you seen phones? Have you found a bag of phones? Have you found a bag of phones? Right when I'm almost at the dock at the very beginning, I run into these inner tubers that had these big chests of coolers with ice or drinks or whatever in it. And I ask them and they go, hold up. And sure enough, he pulls out the bag of phones and everything else. So I obviously lost it right almost at the beginning when I got in the inner tube. But sure enough, somebody would find it. What you look for is what you get. I decided to go up that damn river and actually find those phones. And I wasn't coming back without those damn phones.
That's right. I mean, you made it that non-negotiable. So I love,
Absolutely.
yes,
And I know that's a simple story, but it really does happen when you decide stuff like that.
absolutely. I think that when you decide, when you make those decisions, things start falling into place. It's just
Yep.
like having a vision. So I'm really big into having a vision because when you have that, you've set it up. So it's so out there.
I'm getting
All,
goosebumps as you're going
yeah.
down the line. I know where you're going.
For
Yeah.
everybody that's listening but not
Yep.
viewing, yeah, he definitely had some goosebumps. But when you see that vision and then all the steps start falling into place. Like I give this example to some of my folks when they're struggling to figure out what their vision is. And I give this example about there was this contract that I wanted to get. It was, I think it was probably 40 million or something like that.
Okay.
I mean, it was a decent sized contract
Sure.
with a hospital system. And
Which are typically tough to deal with and have very
very
long
hard.
grace periods.
Right.
Yeah,
I had said it. So there was a timeline. So with a vision, you have to have a timeline. I put the
absolutely.
timeline because it was a larger contract or, for that particular hospital out 18 months. But in my mind, I'm like 18 months, I'm going to accomplish it earlier. I visualized the CEO who I'd never met at that point and had not seen a picture of him at that point. I visualized what he looked like. I visualized what his office looked like. I even visualized the pen that he was signing.
Yep.
Some people might think that's kind of weird or whatever, but
It's weird until you do it.
it's weird until you do it. And then all the steps started to fall into place. Things that I, quite frankly, when I first started, hadn't thought about, but all these things started just falling into place. The people that I needed to meet started falling into place.
Yep.
I did look to see what he looked like, and he was actually pretty close to what my vision was.
That's awesome.
But what was really interesting, well, first off, he said, I'm only signing this if Kathy is in my office when it gets signed, which that was a great compliment. And he booted everybody else out.
That's
But what was
great.
interesting is his office looked probably about 90% of what I imagined.
That's just phenomenal.
The pen that he used was the exact
Crazy.
make
Crazy.
and color of what I had imagined.
That's
The Mont
crazy.
Blanc pen that was a maroon color.
Sure.
And so it was just, and I was like, that's the power. And I finished, I think we signed it in 11 months. I
Yeah,
think.
but Kathy, you can't make that stuff up. All right. I
Right.
mean, literally, you can't make it up. And the thing is, when founders, when people go down that road, whatever the road is, that visualization, that focusing on what that end result is, and you did it down to a T. You had such a minute detail to make that real, because the more detail you give it in your mind, the more real it becomes. But also those good things that happen along the way, I don't think people get it, that when you start visualizing it, when you actually have this thing crystal clear in your mind, that good stuff, and it seems crazy as hell, it just almost in a way drops out of the sky. Stuff starts lining up. And you're like, my God, I can't make this up. I would never have seen this happen. When you have a big idea and you go after it, the stuff appears out of nowhere. It really does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It becomes, I think you have such a clear vision of the end and everything else is kind of murky in it. But then all the things that start popping into place makes that murky area become clearer. So you know the path to take and you can do little pivots. I'm all
Sure.
about the pivot. Do these little, like what you said, the micro steps
Yep.
along the way to really have the outcome. And the overall the outcome was it was great because I got this great contract, but that wasn't the only thing. This hospital system really needed my help. What they had wasn't organized in a way that made it easier for them, to use their equipment and to manage the service and everything else that is associated with it. So what this did was kind of bundle everything together, and it gave them just so much benefit. So not only did I win, but this hospital system won. And that
The
I think
ripple
is,
effect, the ripple effect of that.
it is. And I always think that's the best thing ever. Because I always, again, it's the visualization of the scales of justice. Because when you sell something, you want to have the scales of justice be equal. Like if I win and they don't win, that's a bad thing. If they win and the other way and I lose, that's a really bad thing. You want it to be a win-win situation for
Yep.
everyone, because then you're going to keep that customer for life.
Absolutely. And the thing is that value. I mean, you brought that value. You probably brought more value than you promised in terms of doing it. And that's a big thing. It's actually not only doing what's right by somebody, but really doing almost in a way what's more right by
Yes.
somebody and giving them in a way more, in a really simplistic way.
Yeah, absolutely. I always my what I teach is something else is under promise and over perform.
Yep.
Because I think a lot of people, they promise the world not knowing if they're going to be able to do it, because in their mind they're not clear on it.
Yep. Sure.
And then they really underperform, and that's a disaster for everybody that's involved. But we digress. All right. So you do these amazing videos with lists. And there's two of them that I really, really
Videos or soliloquies. I don't know which one, but they're really soliloquies. But yeah.
So this podcast goes out to entrepreneurs. That is
Sure.
the target market of this podcast. So what I like is you did one on how to know if you're an entrepreneur, and it's a list of 54.
I speak really fast in that
You
video.
do speak really fast, actually.
I've done that as a public speech. It went over very well.
Yeah. But I was going to say, so how did you come up with that list?
It was literally from experiences in one way, in a boring way, but really it's looking back at all the difficulties, all the things that had to be overcome, all the barriers over many, many years, the barriers that not just myself, but that partners experienced, that other founders have experienced. And, you don't hear the things, really the bad things that entrepreneurs, that founders have to go through. You don't hear that, hey, this guy was abused when he was a very young child. And I was just on the line with somebody yesterday from New Zealand. He was abused. His parents were drug addicts. And here he was finding a computer out in the trash that just had sticky keys that some retailer threw away. And voila, he cleaned it up, resold it, and his entrepreneurial career began from that. You don't hear that he had to overcome and had, freezing in the middle of the night and all this stuff. So, right off the bat, if you noticed, I started that list, and I won't say it necessarily how I said it then, but if you come from an effed up family, chances are you're qualified to be an entrepreneur, and a damn good one, because that almost in a way is the best experience for you. So it's not a liability, it is a plus. And so the list really goes into all those types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I love how you say that, because like, let's say you come from a messed up family. I'm going to clean it up just a little bit.
You're corporate. You do that.
Yes, from like a messed up family. I always, because I've helped some kids that have been bullied and things, but it's you have a choice. Your choice is to continue on that path of, having this messed up mentality and just go down that path, or
Yep.
you can make the decision and basically say no. I actually call it, I say it's the power of no. And I know that may sound kind of strange, but the power of no is flipping the script. It's
Yep.
literally saying, no, I'm not going to stay in this messed up type of mindset or whatever it is, that I grew up with. I'm going to do this instead.
Exactly.
And I think that that's a really powerful thing is if you can figure it out, use whatever is bad. Because I always say, out of everything that's bad, something good comes out of it.
I always say this, and I view it, and perhaps I view it a little bit extreme because of what I dealt with and what I grew up with. But I believe that almost in a way, it's what I call the furnace. All right. And
Okay.
so if you go in a furnace and you're sitting there and you're getting fried up, et cetera, and you're dealing with this heat and extreme pressure and everything else, you've got basically two choices. And the choice, it really is a choice. It's not something that happens to you. You either choose to become ash and you're a broken person and you go down that same path, kind of just paraphrasing a little bit what you're doing there, or you literally anneal, you harden, you fundamentally turn into something else that's stronger, that's better, that's a different product, a different version of you. You evolve. So you use those furnace times that you go through it as really fuel to go ahead and get to the next level. So if you're going through the furnace, it's because you should be in the furnace. It's because the universe is in a way saying, hey, that's what you've got to go through to get to the next level. And either you see it and you make the right choice or you don't.
No, absolutely. I love that analogy of a furnace. Like, I really love that. And I think you're exactly right. When you get this bump in the road, so it's not necessarily even like from your child, but let's just say whatever your business is, it's blowing up
Yep. In a bad way,
in a bad way. And
which
think
happens a lot.
it happens a lot. It's almost like you have to be grateful because there is a lesson coming to you. And you have to recognize that there's some information coming to you. And then if you learn from it, so if you learn from like a failure, in other
Yep.
words, too, or something that's really bad, this bump in the road that's happening, you can have to me, the greatest success comes out of failure, out of those bumps in the road. If you can figure it out. Yeah.
But you said the key word there, a key phrase, if you figure it out. I think that they're there on purpose. They're there, the problems come, the barriers come, the difficulty comes in order for you to go ahead and solve it. It is there to be solved. It's not there just necessarily to be experienced. It's not there where somebody's going to appear magically and make this problem go away. It's not that the problem is just going to go magically away on its own typically. You are there to solve it. You are there to raise your level of thinking, to raise your level of resourcefulness, to make you a better person and the company better, because it has to be better in some way. So if you're bleeding money, if you can't get the sales, if your product isn't getting the stickiness that it should be, those are all things that aren't meant to be just sat back and, oh my God, I'm screwed because that's just the end of it. No, they're just part of the process. And the whole point is to trust the process, solve those things, trust the process.
Absolutely. So you brought up the word resourcefulness, which I love that word. People struggle with that.
Yes, they don't get what it is.
They don't. So what do you suggest? I mean, how can we help people understand how to be resourceful when they hit that bump in the road?
I think, first of all, it comes down to a couple things. Number one, there's a certain deal rule I have. I know you're a rule breaker. I'm in the same seat, but I've created certain rules that I live by because I've learned that these things almost have no way you can break them. So one of these deal rules is I am enough. All right. So right off the bat, before I deal with anything else that are these difficult things, it's trusting myself that I have the ability, I have the intelligence, I have whatever it may be to be able to navigate the problem. Okay. So that's number one. So I'm not sitting there questioning myself. I'm not sitting there saying, oh my God, I'm not an expert at this. It doesn't matter. All right. The second thing is to realize that no matter what you have or how little you have all the tools you need to get to the next level. You have literally everything. If you didn't have everything that you needed right now to get to the next level, The universe just wouldn't make sense, and I'd go put a bullet in my head. But I have seen time and time again that the universe actually is kind of fair when it comes to that. Now, everybody has different scenarios, and yeah, you may not have food this day, or you may have extreme difficulty, but everyone has all the resources they need right this second. So if you have a voice and can talk, you can go ahead and reach out to other people, start talking about your problem, start talking about a possible solution, start attracting people to what you're doing or helping you to solve this. If you need help, you ask for help. You don't pretend that you're something that you're nothing. And those little sparks, those little things of taking those actions, and it's taking action, literally gets you to the next level. And you don't have to have a pot to pee in. You can get to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love something that you said, because for some reason people are this is something that holds people up. Asking for help.
Yep.
So important to take that action when you are stuck somewhere, in something. There's somebody out there that can help you with it. You just have to take the initiative. You have to raise your hand and say, hey, I need help in this area.
Yep. But sure enough, even today, you're one level removed from almost everybody. Okay, so you can reach out and find almost everybody that does anything that can solve or specialize in your problem and ask for help. Here's what I find when I ask for help. I still do it, okay? If I don't know something or know how to do it, I'll just reach out and ask somebody for help. 9 times out of 10, they help you. It's like human nature. They want to help you. Number 2, they like that you're authentic and asking for help. And if they can't help you, they tell you they can't help you. So it's a win-win scenario. There's nothing to lose there. Just ask and don't fake it till you make it. Be authentic. If you don't know something, don't say you know it. Ask for help.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yes, never. Oh gosh, especially in the sales process, don't fake it. If you don't know the answer, you just tell them you don't know the answer, because you can always get back to them.
Absolutely.
On that. But yes, asking questions is also, I would say, so besides setting up non-negotiables and a lot of what things that we've talked about, I think being able to ask questions and not be afraid to ask questions is also, I think, a real trait of someone that's successful. Don't you think?
I absolutely 100% agree. And I almost always start out every conversation with somebody new with one question in particular, why they do what they do, how did they get started? Because usually that's a blueprint that's kind of like giving you the idea of what makes sense to them, how to communicate with them. But also the key part is, and you're a big believer in this, is listening. It's listening to what comes back and being able to triangulate and asking even more relevant questions, digging deeper to be able to make that relationship deeper so that you can create that value or see if it makes sense in some way as you progress. But questioning, absolutely. It's a big, big, big plus. It's a requisite. It's a condition.
I think it is. I absolutely is. I know it drives my husband crazy because we'll go out and he'll be like, don't ask any questions. And I'm like, no, I'm going to.
That's great. I think that's a great trait.
Absolutely. But I think being able, like what you said, to be able to triangulate. So in the selling process, there's a difference when people say, I want something versus what is it that they really need? So when you figure out what they really need, and I use a model called the iceberg model, where what you see at the top of an iceberg is about 20%. So what's floating on the water is about 20%. And what's underneath the water is 80%. The goal of winning a contract or helping someone is, if you are down in that 80%, that's where, if you're digging for all the gold in there.
The real stuff is.
The real stuff.
Yep.
So, and one of the things is, what is it that they truly need? Like if somebody says, I want a lower price. I mean, who hasn't heard that a million times?
Sure, of course. Right? Standard objection.
But what do they need? And you get to those needs by asking questions. 100%. Why do you want a lower price? And just really start. The answer, you're listening. you grab a little piece of that, you ask them a different question, and you just keep on going until you really find what it is that they need. And in that case, when you know what they need, you're gonna appear that you know so much, because you've asked so many questions. You're gonna know so much about their company. You might even know more than they do about their company because you've asked so many questions, right?
You're more like a partner. You become more
You
like a
become
partner than just somebody trying to sell them
trying to
something.
sell. Exactly. Because you're both trying to reach a common outcome, a common
Absolutely.
result, whatever that is.
And that takes patience, but the results that come from it and the relationships that are developed are far superior than what would happen in a standard transactional linear sales process.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I
Yes.
advocate that.
You have to get that.
I'm in your corner.
Well, I have to tell you, I've had a lot of fun talking to you. And
I
you
did
have
too.
like if nothing else, everyone needs to go and watch your videos that you do these lists, because there's another one that you call that's called the CEO KOs, which I love that as well too. I really relate to that one because it's all in my mind about being setting up non-negotiables. But tell me where people can find you, Chris.
Sure. They can find me at gusher.co, COGUSHER.co, or you can find me on LinkedIn or anywhere else. I'm pretty easily found. Same thing with the company,
Okay,
Service Gusher.
wonderful. Well, I appreciate you being on this podcast, and you're definitely a rule breaker. So I always welcome you back any other time if you have something new that you want to talk about. And again, thank you so much. It's really been my pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Kathy.